Hey there, everyone.
In today's video, I want to share with you a very common question that I get asked all the time.
And that is, how much water do I need per day?
So it's a great question. It's a very common question. But the answer is not so simple because it depends on many different factors like your body weight, your height, your age, your sex, your diet, how active you are, the climate that you live in, what part of the world you're in, the altitude, if you're at sea level or not, how hot it is outside, how cold it is outside, and even the type of clothing that you wear. All of these things can influence how much water we need per day. However, in this video, I want to give you an easy calculation to determine how much water you should be drinking per day. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say you weigh 150 pounds. Okay, you would take 150 times 2.5, which equals 375 ounces. Or if you wanted to look at it in milliliters, you would take 375 times 30, which equals 11,250 milliliters. Easy calculation. Very basic, but that is going to be a good estimate for most people to figure out how much water they need per day. However, there are some exceptions. There are some unique cases where maybe you need a little bit more or a little bit less. So let's talk about that now. Okay, so what influences our fluid requirements? Like I said, there are several different things that can influence that. The biggest one that I see affecting people's fluid requirements is their level of physical activity. Obviously, if you're a couch potato and you don't move very much, you're not going to need as much water as somebody who goes to the gym and works out every single day. In fact, studies show us that exercise alone can increase our fluid requirements by up to 600 milliliters per day. However, that does not include any additional fluid loss through sweating. So, of course, if you're working out and you're sweating, you're going to lose additional fluids and electrolytes through that sweat. So you need to drink additional water to replace that fluid loss. Another factor that influences fluid requirements is the climate that you live in. So if you live in a warm climate or a hot climate and it's hot outside, you're obviously going to need more water than somebody who lives in a cold climate where it's cold outside. Because you're going to be sweating more if it is hot outside, even if you're not exercising, just simply walking around outside can make you sweat. Also, if you live at a higher altitude, like if you live in the mountains, typically the air is a lot drier at higher altitudes and that can cause us to lose more fluids through our skin. So people who live at higher altitudes tend to need more water. Also, what about if you're a man or a woman? Well, men generally need more water than women because men are typically bigger and taller on average than women. So men will have more mass, and therefore they will have more water within their bodies. And because of that, they need more water. However, women tend to have a higher percentage of body fat than men, and body fat actually holds water. So women actually have more total water within their bodies than men. However, since women are smaller, that percentage of total body water is lower than it is for men. So the difference in fluid requirements between men and women is minimal, but men do need a little bit more. And also, when we're looking at age, children and infants, of course, need more fluids than adults because they're growing, they're developing. Their bodies are changing. They're a lot smaller. So they need more fluids. As we age, as we get older, our fluid requirements change as well because as we age, we tend to have less total body water. And especially as we get older and older, we start to have less muscle and more body fat. And again, body fat holds water, but that doesn't necessarily mean that older people need less water. In fact, as we age, we also tend to lose a little bit of our thirst mechanism, and we also tend to be a little bit less physically active. So both of those things can lead to dehydration. So even though older people have more body fat, which tends to hold more water, I think it is still really important for them to drink plenty of fluids and make sure that they staying hydrated. What about if you're breastfeeding or pregnant? Well, if you're breastfeeding, you definitely need more water because not only are you creating milk for your baby, but you're also losing fluids while you're nursing. And of course, if you're pregnant, you need more water too because you're growing another human being.
Now, what about alcohol? Does alcohol increase or decrease our fluid requirements?
Well, alcohol actually increases fluid requirements because alcohol has a diuretic effect. It makes us pee more. So anytime we're peeing more, we're losing more fluids. And especially if you drinking alcoholic beverages and you not replacing the fluids that you losing, you can become dehydrated pretty quickly. So overall, if you're not sure how much water you need per day, use that formula I gave you earlier. Take your weight in pounds multiplied by 2.5, and that should be a good estimate. However, keep in mind all the other factors that I talked about in this video. If you're exercising or working out, make sure you're adding extra water for that. If you're pregnant, breastfeeding, if you're drinking alcohol, make sure you're adding extra water for that. Make sure you're taking into consideration the climate that you live in, the altitude. All of these things can help you figure out how much water you should be drinking. Now, it's also really important to realize that if you're exercising, working out, or if it's hot outside and you're sweating, it's not enough to just replace the fluids that you're losing with water. You also need to replace the electrolytes that you're losing. When we sweat, we're losing electrolytes like sodium, potassium, magnesium, and a couple others. And if we don't replace those electrolytes, those can affect our performance, our workouts, and can lead to cramping. So it's really important to not only drink water when we're sweating, but also drink something with electrolytes. The next question I get asked all the time is, okay, how do I know if I'm hydrated? Am I hydrated? What does that mean? To be hydrated means to be at the optimal fluid level in our bodies. We don't want to be overhydrated, but we also don't want to be dehydrated. So there's this range where we want to be in the middle. A simple way to check your hydration status is to look at the color of your urine. So if your urine is clear or very pale in color, you're probably well hydrated. If your urine is kind of a darker yellow color, that could mean that you need to drink more water. And then if your urine is very dark or amber colored, that is definitely a sign that you need to drink more water and you might even be a little dehydrated. Also, if you're feeling thirsty, that's a sign that you need to drink more water. If you're feeling hungry, sometimes that can be a sign that you need to drink more water. And also, if you're having headaches, that could be a sign that you're a little bit dehydrated. Of course, there are other signs of dehydration. If you want me to do a video on that, just let me know. But overall, the best way to know if you rehydrated is just to drink water throughout the day. And make sure you always having a bottle of water with you so you can stay hydrated. Alright, so I hope this video was helpful. I hope it answered the question, how much water do I need per day? Remember, take your weight in pounds multiplied by 2.5, and that will give you an estimate of how much water you should be drinking every single day. Alright, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.